want to welcome everybody to our first workshop of 2026. Hopefully, everyone had an amazing holidays and finished the year where they wanted. We're going to start this year off about how we become financially independent. This workshop's really just a basic starting point for some of you. It also might be a refresher for some of you others who maybe have heard this information many times, and this will help kind of provide that refresher there. So, for those of you who haven't been on one of our workshops before, I want to welcome you to this. I'm Chris Price. I'm one of our certified financial planners. I'm a retirement income certified professional, a bunch of other alphabet soup that's behind my name. And really, my job, or one of my big jobs, is to make sure I'm educating everybody along or in the finance field as possible. This also means that if you guys have any one-on-one things that you want to speak about or talk about or discuss or whatever the case might be, reach out to myself, reach out to our team, and we'll find a time for you that's appropriate and I'll allocate to the needs that you have. So, for those of you who've been on my workshops many times, you know we go over the same exact slide almost every time. And it's actually defining what is financial well-being. Now, this definition isn't something that I created or my industry even created. It's something that's defined by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And what it's supposed to do is try to analyze who is financial well-being, right? Where are you in your life when it comes to financial well-being? And how they define it is the following. First one is having control over day-to-day or month-to-month expenses. And we're going to actually talk a little bit about that later on in the slide. So I'll save that for that. Next one is having the ability to absorb a financial shock. Now, you yourself may have already had a financial shock. You may know somebody who's had a financial shock, or this may happen to you. Basically, a financial shock is an emergency and expense, an unplanned expense. Can we absorb that without going into credit card debt or other kind of forms like that? Third one, being on track to meet financial goals. Now, the key word there is being on track, right? I have sat with many people and we've set up what we want our finances to look like in the future and what goals we have. But somewhere along the line, we might have fallen off that track. So, are we able to get back on track? Do we know where the track even is? And then, last but not least, just having the financial freedom to make choices to enjoy your life. Basically, having a little extra dollars to do what you want to do, not do what you have to do to survive. Cool. So, today's agenda, we're going to talk about what is financial independence. We're going to talk about financial tasks you should have early on in your career. We should talk about financial targets you should also have following that. And then we're going to review, right? Now, I see here, you may see here that we're simply using some age ranges to organize the information for you, but it's the ages is not relevant. It's all about when you want to really start being financial independent. So don't worry too much about those ages as more as where you are in your financial progression. So, what is financial independent? So, how do we define financial independence? Right? It's going to be really hard to reach a goal if we can't understand or define what that goal is. So, that first one is having complete responsibility for our living expenses. This aligns with exactly that first category that we mentioned a couple slides before. And that's basically having control over your day-to-day or month-to-month expenses. This is, for lack of better terms, basically being able to have a budget and making sure that that budget doesn't have us live paycheck to paycheck. Do we understand what our expenses are? Can we control those or have some kind of control of those expenses? Second one is the ability to support your desired lifestyle. So let's be honest with each other, right? We're all social creatures and we do like things that are outside what our normal bills are. Are we able to support that? And last but not least on here is prepared for the future. Prepared for the future is many things. The ability to absorb a financial shock and me being on track to meet our financial goals. So in today's session, we're going to talk about each one of those and how we're going to become financially independent. Cool. So, first one, being completely responsible for your living expenses It includes not only your basic needs like food, shelter, clothing, but also needs of the modern world, right? Think electricity, transportation, sanitation, being able to communicate with the others. But being responsible for your regular living expenses should include other things that we may not want to talk about, like our debts, insurances, healthcare, things along that lines. So consider this. Complete responsibility for your living expenses will be the minimum requirement of your financial independence. So again, that second one is the ability to support a desired lifestyle. Like I stated earlier, we're social creatures and lifestyle has costs. So having the money to be able to be above those basic living expenses that we just spoke about. So this may be something like apparel, electronics, accessories. It may be something like recreational or fitness if that's what you're into. It might be hobbies or vacation or travel, charitable giving, entertainment. So this is the stage when you're able to do these, this is when you start feeling more financially independent. When you're just using your basic, when you're just able to fulfill your basic expenses, you don't have the same feeling as financial independent. You feel like you're working for those expenses. This is when you're going to start feeling of that financial independence. And then that last bullet point that we talked about was being prepared for the future. Now, this is by far what I would consider one of the most important sections of financial independence. Whenever we create goals or think about anything, we always think of ourselves as being in a better position tomorrow than we are today. Well, without being prepared for that, without having some kind of goals and action plans, we're always just going to live as good as we do today. We're not going to get further. But we can't just think about the growth of tomorrow. We also have to think about shocks to our financial system. This may be something that was unprepared. Maybe it's health care related. Maybe it's a home related. Maybe it's family dynamic related. Maybe it's a change of income and jobs. We need to have some kind of emergency fund to protect us from that scenario. The others are a little bit more self-explanatory. Retirement accounts, we definitely need to have that. Individual insurance if you need or your finances are protecting others, things of that nature. So, financial tasks for your 20s. Again, years doesn't as much matter as the beginning of your career, beginning of your financial journey, let's just say. So we're going to take a deeper dive into this. Now we're going to go through each one of these sections, but the main thing I want you to understand that all these have in common is a budget. All these are budget-based items. So a budget is something that's supposed to track the ins of your money and the outs of your money, what you're getting and what you're paying. And now, to be honest with you, after going over this many, many times, a budget kind of gets a bad rap, or the word gets a bad rap. It gets a bad rap because it's also it's always viewed or usually viewed as a restriction on our spending. Right? When we have to create a budget is usually because we're spending too much. But that's not what a budget is supposed to do. A budget is really supposed to allow you to control your income. It's allowed to control where your money goes. So you can make sure that you're achieving the goals you want, you're paying for the things that you need, and you're getting further down the line of becoming financially independent. So if you look at the slide here, you'll see things like establish financial goals, right? We do a whole workshop on financial goals because it's a lot more intense than just saying, I want to have $1 million at retirement, or I want to buy a vacation home, or I want to buy a rental property or something of that nature. You have to have, it has to have some kind of time frame. It has to be achievable. There's certain things that make a goal valuable. Creating a debt management plan. We're going to talk about this later, but this is a debt management plan for some of those that may be in debt, not a debt payoff plan. Implement savings plan. Obviously, everybody should have some kind of savings plan. Protect against setbacks. Hopefully, nobody here has ever had a financial setback, but it is likelihood to happen. And identifying and avoiding potential pitfalls. Whoops. think I, oh, there it goes. Okay. Cool. Cool. So on your screen here, we have something of establishing financial goals, which I don't want anyone to take more than just being a template. This is only a template. Have financial goals that are unique to you and they're important to you. But if you don't have those, here are some financial goals that you can try to achieve. We call this the 5, 10, 15, 20 approach. Now, this approach can help you get started, right? It could give you 2 short-term financial goals for your income and saving and 2 long-term financial goals for your retirement and debt. The first short-term goal is to increase your income each year by 5%. That should be a goal for you. If that's raises, if that's picking up overtime, if that is monetizing a hobby, joining the share or gig economy, just trying to increase your income every year at that 5%. The next one is savings, setting a target goal of 10% of your take-home pay. So everyone on this call probably has a paycheck where they already have deductions taken out, retirement taken out, those kind of things. And you're going to get a net amount that's going to come to you. Try to take 10% of that and put it into some kind of savings vehicle. Now, for the long-term goals, try to have 15 times your annual salary for retirement. So if you are planning how much money do I need for my retirement, an easy method, which again, this is just easy, this is not unique. Everybody's scenario is unique. And if you do want your unique answer, let us know. We could go through it. But try to consider having 15 times your annual salary saved for retirement. What that means is if you make $50,000, could you have $750,000 saved for retirement? And that is always one that gets most people to sit back in their chair and try to understand how that would be possible. So mind you, make sure that is something that you consult my team professional to find your exact number. That's just something that you're going to see if you want a template. And last but not least, plan to have your debt, maybe excluding your mortgage, paid down within 20 years. So let's start with a debt management plan. Now, the reason why I call it a debt management plan and not a debt payment plan is that debt is not your only financial obligation. It's crucial that you take into effect all your finances when you create some kind of debt management plan. Now, there's many ways to create a debt management plan. If we do look at this screen, will be one of them. But before we look at the screen, let's look at before we look at the graph, let's look at the screen and see how the plan usually is made. We want to work within our budget. So we want to make sure that we're looking at all the things that we have expenses in our budget and working within there. We want to tackle one debt and move on to the next. Now, there's many different ways of which debt to tackle first. We'll touch on that, but we want to tackle one debt and move on to the next. We want to develop a timeline and stick to it. All right, we want to make sure we have payoff dates, meaning we have certain debts that's going to be paid off by certain dates, and we know how many more payments it's going to take to get there. We're achieving and feeling ourselves get there. We want to build momentum. Now, building momentum is a huge reason why there's a lot of strategies around paying one debt first. You're building momentum. And then strike a balance with your savings, meaning you still need to make sure you have a savings plan. You can't just throw everything into debt, or you probably shouldn't throw everything into debt management. Have some savings plan also. So the graph on your screen is one of the strategies to paying off debt. This actually strategy is saying this particular person has 4 different debts. And because they're trying to build as much momentum as possible, they're going to pay the one that has the highest minimum payment or first. They want to throw as much money in there as possible to get that debt paid off. And as soon as that debt is paid off, they'll go to the next one. And then as soon as the next one's paid off, they'll go to the next one, next one, next one. Other methodologies is like paying the one with the highest interest rate first. Meaning, if you have 3 credit cards or 4 credit cards, pay the minimum on everything except for the one that has the highest interest rate, pay the maximum that you can pay as much as you can. Get that one down, then do the next one and go on, so on, so on, so on, so on. Again, there's many other methodologies. I actually am writing an article on debt management right now. So for those of you on our newsletter or those subscribed to the emails that you get from us, you'll receive an article about debt management here probably pretty soon. No. Implementing a savings plan. So start saving now, right? Enjoy compound interest. You've heard more sayings than I care to bring up about starting early is better for you. You've heard more people say, if I only started in my early years, how much I would have now. So plan to start saving as soon as possible, even if it's an amount that you think is insignificant. Small, start with whatever it is and slowly increase that amount as you can. Make savings automatic. I can't tell you how important this amount is. This is so important that I try my best for every person I speak to. Doesn't matter if their income is chaotic. Some maybe they work on commission and their income is super high one month, super low next month, or whatever the case might be. We try to still make sure we have something automatically saved every single pay period or every single month, no matter what. Eventually, it just feels like it's one of those things that just comes out of your bank. You don't have to worry about it. And it's amazing how fast your savings grows. Create an emergency account. So if you don't have an emergency account, make sure your first savings are going to a bucket that would act as an emergency account before it goes to anything else. Enroll in your retirement accounts if you haven't already. And honestly, if I want to add to that, increase the amount you're giving to your retirement accounts if you can. So your retirement accounts, your 401ks, they are automatic if you set them up to be that way. So they're going to solve a lot of these. Now, last one we see learn to invest. Although I think it is important for everybody to learn money and to learn how investments work, there are easy ways to invest that you don't have to know as much. Your 401ks already kind of break through some of the noise and provide you with investments that are sound. You do have options, make sure the options are right for you, but they are sound. So now let's talk about protecting yourself against some losses. So although this may be our least favorite subject, this is maybe one of the most important, right? For most people I talk to who have debt, who have this snowball amount, it's usually started from some kind of setback that they had. Something happened in their life that was more expensive than they expected or that they wanted to, and it kind of sent them down this snowball effect of debt issues. So first and foremost, what we always say is take advantage of whatever the employer is sponsoring. The most common ones are things like healthcare, short-term, long-term disability, life insurance. Some of them might even have professional advice, which I'm glad you guys are taking advantage of now. But all these things will help you be prepared or knowledgeable about some of the issues that may happen. So having a checklist of what you should do and when you should do it. First thing, following a monthly budget. We discussed the importance of a monthly budget earlier or of a budget earlier, but it's important to reiterate that or keep looking at your budget. A budget is the best way that you can make informed decisions about your finances. Everything you want to achieve financially starts with that budget. Right? So we spoke obviously about employer benefits. Take advantage of the employer benefits. When you have open enrollment, read what your selections that you have. Don't carry too much credit card debt. I know that's not as much as a aha or more of a common information, but don't carry too much credit card debt because unfortunately, credit card debt kind of snowballs that debt a lot more than you'd like. Pay the right debts first. So if you're someone who has more than one debt, well, which one would be the right debt first? Maybe it's the highest interest rate. Maybe it's the least secure. Which one is the right debt first? As you could possibly imagine, everyone would say, avoid missed monthly payments. So on almost all things that you have to pay for, if you miss that payment, there's a significant fee that goes along with that. Let's make sure we don't do that. And one of the common things I do see is don't spend too much on housing. There's a lot of expenses that come along with buying a house outside the purchase price. If you are looking to make a purchase, we could have a whole conversation on that individually because it is unique to each one, but there's a lot more expenses than you could think when it comes to buying a house. And you do want to keep your target spending about 25 to 40% of your income on housing. This is everything to do with rent, mortgage, electrical, utilities, all the stuff, maintenance, all the stuff that goes along with it. So, financial targets for your next generation, your 30s, right? Be prepared for the unexpected, obviously. Be closer to being debt free. If that first decade we made a plan for it, we should be closer now. Mind you, no setbacks. Be building assets. These are really the time when you're maybe structured your income and your budget correctly. You paid off some debt. Let's build more assets. Have stabilize your finances. Basically meaning some of the things I just spoke about. We understand a little bit more what's going on and obviously avoiding pitfalls. So prepare for the unexpected. One of the things that I get a lot of questions on is how much should we have in an emergency account? Now, if we looked online or if we look general, we're going to see that first answer, which is here on your screen, anywhere between 3 or 6 months of your income. But mind you, you have to discover what is your most risk and what would be your obligations if that risk happened. So like for instance, if you're somebody who's close to retirement, you really have no debt, you have tenured in your profession, having less of a savings you may get away with it, right? Because maybe your biggest concern is maybe there's an issue with the AC or water heater or something like that. Now, if you're maybe younger, you have family that you're taking care of, more debt, little less reliability of your job, your stability of your job, having more in savings is more important. So that answer is unique. 3 to 6 months is what you would see if you looked generically, but maybe you should be a little bit more out, depending on where your area is. Life insurance in place. Now, what this should say is the right amount of life insurance in place. Being in my position, people usually call or reach out to me when they're in a time of transition, meaning something happened that they need our services. This is something as pleasurable as getting ready for retirement, saving for a kid's education, buying a home, all those things. But it might also be the other way. The other way is maybe divorce, or maybe someone was to pass. And when someone is to pass, the thing I see the most is someone might have had insurance, but they really didn't have that much insurance. They kind of just checked off their box. Maybe they had $100,000 or $50,000 at work or something of that nature. The big thing I want you to understand is life insurance isn't just checking off the box, it's having the right amount that can support your family. If you do have a question on what that amount is, let myself, my team know. We'll do what they call human life value, or you go online and do a human life value. That basically will give you a roundabout answer of how much insurance you should have. God forbid you were to pass today, based on your family dynamic, the money you make, the age you are, that kind of stuff like that. And last, we see disability income. Now, disability income insurance is probably the last one I see people think about, but to me, and even in my own life, is my most important one. So myself, I support my family on my income. I pay my mortgage on my income. I pay for the cars on my income. Everything I have is based on my income. Well, what if I didn't have that income because maybe I was on an accident on 95 and I couldn't work for 3 months or 6 months or something like that happened? It doesn't mean I'm in a wheelchair like the guy on your screen. It just means that I couldn't perform my duties at work for an extended amount of time. How am I paying for things? So just keep that in mind. Next is debt. So this time frame in our life, we should be closer to being debt free. Hopefully, student loans are nearly or starting to be paid off. We'll leave it at that one. But also, we should be closer to all kind of debt freeze unless we did build an or start building an asset with that, like just got a mortgage or something like that nature. But we should be closer to debt free now than we were. Building assets. So by the time we get to this stage, we want to start talking about long-term assets. So this could be something like real estate or other investments. Talk about diversification. Don't have one of all investments. You could look at any time in history and you could see different investments did better than others, and they were never always the same. Sometimes real estate was the best investment, sometimes it's the stock market, sometimes it's commodities. Doesn't every time you look, there's going to be a different time. So be diversified. Make sure you understand what your asset allocation strategies are. It's another way of saying diversification. At this time, hopefully, we want to have, I don't know what I say, half a year's salary in retirement accounts. I don't know why that's there, to be honest with you. If you ask me personally, ignore that one. You should be in a different, each person's unique. Hopefully, we have a little bit more than 1 year salary in here, but that's a totally different scenario. Don't ignore that one, please. We're going to ignore both those. So, finances should be stabilized, or hopefully they're stabilized at this point because we spent so much time creating that budget. So your monthly budget is maybe more of a routine. Right? If you were to have a financial setback, you'd be able to quickly identify where you're going to pull money from to protect you against that. At this point, you should have or should be less reliant on credit cards. Credit cards are now there for convenience, points, think fraud protection, but not relying. And ideally, we want to have built our credit score at this time. At this time, we had time to build credit, pay off credit, get a credit line a little bit higher. So we want to strive for a higher credit score. Now, I will tell you this, early on in your career or in your middle of your career, having a high credit score is super important. It allows you to do things that you couldn't do. It allows to leverage the rest of your life today. Later on, it becomes less and less important because maybe you have the assets to pay and maybe you're not making big purchases anymore. But in the beginning, it's very crucial. Cool. So let's kind of go over some of those that we just talked about, right? So the first one is having more than one source of income. This is a great scenario if we could. What they're really talking about is if we're trying to increase our income by 5% every year, maybe it might not always come from a raise. Maybe we're maxed out on what that raise can be. So are we maybe turning a hobby into something we can monetize? Are we maybe doing something else that could provide a little bit more income that year or different income that year? Remove complexity from your finances. So one of the big questions that people will call me on is because they heard about this or saw this get rich thing or that get rich thing. And a lot of times that's what it sounds like, get rich things. I will tell you this. If someone has the perfect get rich program or whatever the case may be, they're usually not publicizing it too much. Becoming wealthy is a slow, steady pace, is reliable, is achievable. Getting rich quick, usually not. Financial strategies can change with the times. Yeah, financial strategies can change with the times, obviously. And then one of the ones we didn't touch on yet is number 4 here, which I think is super important, and that's having your correct will and or trust in place and your beneficiaries up to date. So one of the big things I do see is when someone opens up an investment account or 401k or whatever the case might be, they either forget to put beneficiaries on there or they put the beneficiary and they never change it. They'll go decades, years, decades, more than that, and never change a beneficiary. Or our life has changed. Our people in our life has changed. Make sure we keep them up to date. And I do encourage everyone to work with a professional in some form or the other, just at least to bounce ideas off of. This doesn't mean that you're doing any business with them, but at least you have someone to bounce ideas off of and hear what they've heard or seen other individuals do. I also encourage everyone to have more than one financial professional that they can do this with, right? Because unfortunately, You're not that financial professional or in that financial professional field. So how do you know if they're giving you the best or the best knowledge? Maybe having someone else to back up those ideas or check out those ideas is important. So don't forget to establish your career plan. For most of us, a career and the income from the career is what gets us to our financial independence. So even though we didn't really mention career plan in this, we do definitely want to make sure it's discussed at some point because it is one of the things that's going to help us achieve financial independence. Obviously, right? The more money we make, the easier it is to get financial independent. And although I do say that, and we all may feel that, the amount of money you make doesn't mean you have financial independence. Trust me, I'll have people who make 50,000, $500,000, $5 million, and unfortunately, they've just kind of decided to spend as much as they make, no matter how much it is they make. So there still may not be financial dependent. Does make it easier. Cool. All right, cool. Now that we're at the end here, let's just kind of review what we spoke about. So identify tasks you can implement today. This is the most important thing. Everybody on this call should be either looking at their 401k right now, increasing their savings, pulling up their credit card, mortgage, car loan, student loan statements, and developing or starting to develop that plan. Track your progress regularly. This is one of the unfortunate, most missed steps in financial planning. You should have milestones and track that progress. A lot of clients that I have, or I encourage a lot to do all this on a quarterly basis. Set this up with your spouse every quarter, where you guys maybe go through that quarter. The reason why is whatever you're planning today, something's going to happen to kick you off those tracks. How are you getting back on track? Quarterly meetings is a great way to say, okay, well, this was a great quarter. Let's make up some and maybe pay off some debt or save some more. Okay, this was not such a great quarter. Let's cut back this quarter to play catch up. Or whatever the case might be, make sure you have milestones and regular meetings. Protect against the unexpected. Again, I feel like I've said this a bunch of times. It happens to everybody. Are you ready and prepared for it? And avoid common money mistakes like I spoke about, like the get rich programs and things along those lines. So I want to thank everyone for being part of our first workshop this year. As you know, we bring a workshop every single month to you guys, all about different topics. Hopefully this one was impactful. If you guys do have any questions and want to schedule a meeting with my team, you could do it through the survey. I also encourage you to complete the survey because we use those surveys as a way to determine what other things should we bring to you guys for free, nothing else. We just want to make sure we bring the best and most information to you. Hope everyone has an amazing start to the new year. You achieve all the financial goals that you have for yourself, and I'll see you guys next month.